Donald Trump and his corrupt and incompetent Department of Justice have lost more than 7,000 immigration detention cases in recent months. Now, as the Trump DOJ has either fired or lost via resignations over 7,000 lawyers and top staffers, they've also lost over 7,000 immigration cases in these recent months. As Kyle Cheney explains, increasingly what the DOJ is telling all of these judges and how they are losing is that they have no argument at all to even present to the court to get the facts out there. They can't secure the affidavits from the ICE officers who engaged in these detentions, and they can't find lawyers who can even work on these cases. So increasingly, when you look at some of these orders from the federal judges and what's being included in these legal briefs, you have this, for example, on January 23rd, 2026, respondents filed an answer to the petition stating, quote, "Respondents do not have an opposition argument to present." Or how about this? Undersigned counsel was unable to obtain documentation from respondents sufficient to provide factual support for a response to the petition. Accordingly, respondents do not oppose the court ordering petitioner to receive a bond hearing at this time. So what's happening, to be very clear, is that you have ICE and Border Patrol Gestapo kidnapping people off of the streets, throwing them into detention centers, which look and feel a lot like concentration camps. Once these migrants, or in some cases citizens, are able to hire lawyers, they file what's called petitions for habeas corpus to either be released or to get a bond hearing, at which point the government, Donald Trump's DOJ, has to issue a response. And oftentimes the response says, "We don't have a response. We don't know why we kidnapped the person," or "There's no response at all." Meanwhile, you have people who have been kidnapped and thrown in concentration camps with those horrific videos that we show you. But when they actually have to be litigated, the Department of Justice can't even provide any facts or any declarations to the court. As Kyle Cheney writes, "Here are a few examples of cases where ICE detained someone and the administration declined to mount a defense of the decision." How about this individual right here who was detained by ICE in November, and then she filed a lawsuit seeking a release the administration did not have an opposition to present. Judge Klausner said the following: "It appears respondents arrested a chronically ill 70-year-old woman who came to this country to avoid religious persecution and applied for asylum, who has lived here peacefully for 26 years and complied with all check-in requirements and other conditions of release, who has no known criminal record and poses no threat to anyone, then kept her in detention for months without sufficient medical care, and they do not have any argument to offer to even try to justify these actions." Or how about this? On January 26, Judge Cato, a Biden appointee, ordered the release of another Iranian national who had been ordered deported after a drug conviction in 2018, but whose deportation to Iran could not be arranged. ICE detained the man last June, but has been unable to deport him since, so the man filed a lawsuit seeking release in January. The Trump administration's response: "At this time, respondents do not have an opposition argument to present." A week later, for the same reason, Cato ordered the release of a man born in the Soviet Union who was ordered deported to Russia in 2005 after a conviction, but whose deportation could not be arranged. How about on January 27th, Judge Dolly G., an Obama appointee, ordered the release of an Afghan man who had been detained for a year while the administration was unable to secure his deportation to the Taliban-led nation or an alternative third country. Once again, the administration had, quote, no opposition argument to his release from custody. On February 17th, a judge ordered the release of a Vietnamese man with paranoid schizophrenia who had been ordered deported after a 2000 burglary conviction, but whose deportation cannot be effectuated because of Vietnam's longstanding reluctance to repatriate certain types of nationals. And so, especially when we're talking about the Iranian asylum seekers as well, if they went back to Iran right now, they would be clearly executed right away. And so I don't think we talk enough as well about what happens when Donald Trump has deported some of these asylum seekers. And there hasn't even been a count yet of how many people likely have been massacred and murdered directly as a result of the Trump regime trying to override their asylum claims. But in these examples that I've given you here, the Trump regime hasn't even mounted an opposition. That's how incompetent they are. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel and the Talking Feds Substack and the Talking Feds podcast. Harry, it's great to see you. For those who don't know, Harry was also the top federal prosecutor in the Western District of Pennsylvania. He was the United States attorney there, and he was one of the top federal prosecutors in Washington, D.C.'s Main Justice back in the day. Harry, this is unheard of stuff where the Department of Justice does not even have arguments. And to do it on this scale, we're not talking about one or two cases, which, by the way, for the DOJ that you remember, Harry, even one or two of these situations would be a complete and utter stain that would probably rise to the top and say, how did we do this? We kept someone detained for months and didn't have an argument, and everybody up the chain of command would probably get fired for that. But this is happening thousands and thousands of times. Harry, give us your perspective on this.
Yeah, Ben. So first, I want to put this in a broader context. What's going on here? This is one government. Government is taking action. And when it comes time to defend it in court, the lawyers for the government have nothing to say. Now, that should really indicate that what the client, this is ICE, is doing is flawed, is wrong, needs to be reformed. There needs to be a policy intervention, because how can it be that what's going on, that one government agency comes in and literally DOJ is silent? Now, more broadly, what's happening here, all these people, the 7,000 who have been successful, are saying is, until you deport me, I want to be at liberty like any other, say, criminal defendant. But ICE has been insisting it's a whole different process, and ICE, for many reasons, and we've seen this again and again, wants to be able to just collar these people, throw them into the detention center, and then you don't have to worry about them. It's an unbelievable outrage that people have been there, up to a year. And you named the individual people. I just want to note about the Afghan man. These are people who fought for us in Afghanistan and have come here and would totally be at immediate risk of death if they were to return now to that country. And ICE is indiscriminate, is the kindest way to put it. They just want to round up anybody and put them in these. You call them concentration camps, and that's not an exaggeration, but in some ways they're worse. It's not just they're crowded this way, but we certainly have seen reports of just atrocious, subhuman kind of conditions with people forced to sleep near broken, overflowing toilets and all this stuff. Imagine being there for sort of months at a time. So what this really reflects is the intransigence of ICE and the department that has mounted this argument again and again and again. Lost it every time except in the Fifth Circuit. And the argument is we can automatically, without any kind of argument or process, take someone on the immigration channel, stick them in the detention center, and just make them disappear non-persons. The Fifth Circuit, a very conservative judge there, said that they could do it. And why? Because we're going to interpret everybody out there, even if, like that woman, they've been here 26 years, as applicants for admission, and that's a different category. That category, of course, is for people who just show up at the border. And there are ways in which, under law, you can treat them in a more summary fashion. But it doesn't apply to people who have been here, and it really doesn't apply. They're really now getting at people who, in all ways, but technical ones, they are American citizens and members of the community. So they're just again and again essentially ignoring the law, taking people, putting them away, and if they don't have lawyers, as you say, it could be a month, 2 months, and a year of just horrendous conditions. And then basically, because they want to keep mounting this claim, we don't need any process. But every court has said that, and it's just ICE's kind of intransigence, and I mean, we see this in other areas. The AUSAs, the honest ones who are there, can't. One reason they can't handle it is ICE doesn't give a crap, doesn't give them the documentation, doesn't make any argument about why this member of the community is a flight risk. And judges apply the normal standards. It's just to say you don't have to be, in this hellhole while the government is, preparing to make whatever argument it is. So this feature of the government as a whole has been told what to do, but you have a rogue agency, and that puts the DOJ in the position, even if they're solid, of going forward with no argument, nothing to say. That has to mean not simply, as you said, I would go up the chain in DOJ. Somebody's got to make sense of what's happening in the government, that ICE continues to press this argument after courts reject it. They continue to reject it. But hey, 7,000, what about the, 2,000, 7,000, 12,000 people who don't have lawyers, have just been grabbed off the street and stuck, in these detention centers, and haven't been able to have the wherewithal to bring the habeas corpus motions. This is just a real kind of scandal, the creation of a whole second-class persons who don't have any rights because of ICE's real mania to try to warehouse people so they can't make trouble going forward.
The interconnectedness, Harry, between this and also the lack of resources at the DOJ, combined with the cruel, unusual maliciousness, is really a recipe of disaster. Because the DOJ is supposed to, in theory, be the good guys and provide the right types of data, but here they're functioning as a criminal cartel. We don't know the extent of really the horrors that are taking place. I think there's been great reporting by the MeidasTouch network, by groups like ProPublica, The Guardian, and so many others delved into what the DOJ is doing. But still, I have to admit, it's probably just the tip of the iceberg. And when we find out what's really been going on behind the scenes, I think it's going to not just be horrifying. I think it's going to, really just take a long time, morally and ethically, just to come to grips with what this country has done. And it's what I alluded to before, Harry. I mean, how many people have been sent to their deaths as a result of what this regime has been doing that we don't even know about? Is it thousands? Is it tens of thousands? Harry, is it hundreds of thousands of people? Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you add the USAID aspect of this and cutting international aid and allowing people to contract things like HIV that was otherwise preventable and starve to death. Like we haven't even fully grasped the number, Harry. And so I just want to flag that now and put that pin in it, because we need to always come back to that. I'll let you get the final word.
I want two more pins here, Ben. The first is, We have not had any really exposure to, except occasional people who have emerged and told horror stories. An unexamined part of this whole scandal is these detention centers, what they look like, what's happening here. They are really out of public view. That's number one. Number two is, it's been well documented that this administration has completely broken down the normal walls between DOJ and the White House. And this, that's one reason why we have these rank reprisal prosecutions. But this is another one. Here you have, as you say, the agency that normally would be about the Constitution and the law and would speak with a special authority to ICE saying, you can't do that. The courts are going to hand our heads to us because here's what the law says. But rather than doing that, that very position gets overridden because over at the White House, the president and Stephen, as was it Kristi Noem who said that, say, screw it, get every immigrant and do every thing you want. That's my political imperative. So it overrides the law. It's a very tangible indication of what could seem a little kind of abstract, the White House's connection to the DOJ, but that it makes the DOJ not just lawless, but agents of what, as you say, is in many ways a cruel-hearted, vindictive, and completely, just on a human level, atrocious kind of policy. And it makes the lawyers who are supposed to be standing up for the Constitution the agents instead of that kind of rank violations of, our most fundamental legal principles.
Harry Litman runs the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Harry, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody subscribe there.
Thanks, Ben.
And everybody subscribe here as well.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.